Welcome to the UK PT's podcast, where we delve into the world of personal training one episode at a time. Here are your hosts, Joshua Mullen and Mark Laws.
Welcome, Gary, to the UK PT's podcast. I believe we're now on episode 18, which is, I know, right? We're getting there in numbers. We're nearly in the triple digits, but we'll a few more weeks. So, first of all, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it. Obviously, in UK PTs, you are one of the, I believe you were like one of the founding, participants, and you've been in the group for years. And you've been helping people with your knowledge for a long time in the group. So today's podcast is all about you. We're going to get to know you a bit more through our first section, which we call the 27 Club. So we have 3 rounds of 9 questions, kind of like a quick fire situation. And you've got 90 seconds to answer 9 questions. So I'll do round 1 and round 3. And Mark will be doing round 2. Mark, are you ready with the timer?
Every week I say yes, but I'm not. It's just like being on Blockbusters, but worse. Right, timer is ready.
Okay, round 1, education. So, in which year did you qualify in your chosen profession?
2003, I got my PhD.
Who was the education provider?
That was the University of Wales.
How long did it take to qualify?
3 years.
What was the last piece of CPD that you completed?
Advanced motivational interviewing.
Nice. What's the next CPD that you've got your eye on?
Counselling, level 2.
Nice. What's the highest level of qualification or education that you've got?
The PhD.
There we go. Should a PT ever be reassessed? And if so, how often?
Yeah, I think yes. If you're good at your job, then yeah. And maybe biannually.
Nice. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at your job?
8.
Nice. That is round 1 done. I skipped one of the questions because it's not relevant, but good. Solid answers. That was a solid session.
Very good. And quick as well. Efficient. That's probably the first person ever who has been quick fire in the quick fire round. Right, Gary, round 2 is based loosely on the fitness industry. So question 1, please name the most underrated person, product, or thing in the fitness industry.
Cool. Underrated?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a hard one. Christ. Underrated in the fitness industry.
I think this is my favourite question.
Christ, that's a really hard question. Underrated in the fitness industry. Bloody hell.
I'd probably go for the UK PT's podcast.
Rob Johnson, Future Fit.
Oh, my boss. Yeah, great shout. Question 2, please name the most overrated person, product, or thing in the industry. And don't say the UK PT's podcast. Although that would be an acceptable answer.
I don't know if I'm not going to name names. That'll drop me right in it.
You wouldn't be the first. People have.
I can do without the controversy. Overrated. Ketogenic diet.
Cool. What book should all personal trainers read? And it doesn't have to be a PT book.
Oh, I know. Motivational interviewing in nutrition and fitness.
Oh, yeah. This is where me and Jill, we both got it on our desks.
Yeah. There you go.
If sales of that book haven't gone up by about 3 since we've been doing this podcast, then
I think Dawn Clifford owes me a fortune. I'm forever pushing that book.
Question 4, foam rolling, yes or no?
Not a clue. Yes.
No, leave that one. What common fitness myth do you wish that you could debunk forever? Health, fitness, nutrition myth.
Debunk forever. That healthy eating's difficult and takes a lot of time.
Nice. What is the best piece of work-related advice you've ever been given?
Never get to the point where you think you know it all.
Two more. Sorry. Would be your ultimate fitness industry podcast guest?
Ultimate guess. That's a good one.
Who would you like to listen to? Present company excluded, of course. No one ever says us, Josh, do they?
Only me and you say it.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan.
Oh, bloody hell. What a good one. Finally, Gary, what are your favourite 3 exercises?
Endurance walking. Press ups. Abdominal crunch.
Easy peasy. We might have gone over the 90 seconds on that one, but we made up for it because we went under on the first one. Josh, over to you for round 3.
Okay, so Gary, round 3 is all about personal stuff. Some of the questions are a little bit out there. I'm just going to warn you in advance. Well, one question in particular, but we'll get to that in a minute. So, question 1, cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Good choice. Favorite city that you visited?
Barcelona.
Nice. Barcelona. So you have to say it, like the local.
I didn't know you spoke Spanish, Josh.
Question 3. If you could attend any concert with anyone playing, dead or alive, who would it be?
Led Zeppelin.
Good choice. What was the last TV series you've watched or streamed an episode of?
Ooh, TV series. I hate series because I can't be asked to wait for the next one.
So,
Killing Eve.
I haven't watched that yet. It's going to be really good. If you could choose anyone to play you in a movie about your life, who would it be?
God. Keanu Reeves. Just because he's cool. Yeah, unfortunately, that's gone. So,
tea or coffee, and how'd you take it?
Coffee, white, 1 sugar.
Nice. Would you rather go back in time to speak to your ancestors or forward in time to speak to your descendants?
That's an interesting one. Back in time.
Nice. We get a very mixed bag on that one, don't we? It's like 50-50. Question 8. This one's the real kind of current political controversy, always in the papers, that sort of stuff. Would you rather shag a goat that nobody will ever know, or not shag the goat, but everyone thinks that you did shag the goat?
You're right, that's out there. Shag a goat and nobody know.
Okay, interesting. Number 9, name one thing that is still on your bucket list.
Ooh. Parachute.
Nice. Okay, where would you do it? Where would be your place of choice?
New Zealand would be the ideal place to do it. Yeah.
Oh, love it. That's on my list. Is skydiving as well. So Australia, New Zealand. Woo-hoo-hoo. See,
Fuck that. Plane doors are made to be closed and sealed, not opened and fucking jumped out of.
so that is the 27 club done. That is it.
Cool.
I would say you passed with flying colours. And there was a joke to be made there about the University of Wales when you said about shagging a goat. I thought I'd leave it.
It should have been sheep, really, shouldn't it? And it's like...
Okay, Mark. I believe we're moving into the interview. So if you don't mind, I might start with the first question.
Be my guest, mate.
Okay, so Gary, a lot of people watching this are probably going to know you from years of contribution to UK PTs and different courses that you've run and stuff. And I've seen your journey as, you started off very heavily focused on nutrition, and then you moved more into the behavior change kind of arena. So my question is, what's been your journey so far? What did it look like for you? How did you get into it? Let us know.
It's been really convoluted because I was in the forces, then I was a computer engineer, looked after major banks, really stressful job. Then I was a PT. I've been a PT 28 years, and I represented Great Britain at the first ever personal training convention in the States.
Wow.
So then I figured out that all my clients wanted to know about nutrition, and I was blagging it. I just quote things out of magazines and Christ knows what. I was even writing in the paper about it. I used to write for the Chester Chronicle, and I'd write pieces on nutrition, even though I did not have a clue what I was talking about. When I look back at some of the stuff I wrote, it's like horrendous. Of it, shred that.
Yeah.
So then I did my nutrition degree, and I became heavily focused on nutrition. I didn't plan to be. I was going to do nutrition alongside PTing. Did that, and then FutureFit sponsored me to do my PhD, which is in men's weight management, and that's where I started to kind of uncover the importance of psychology and behavior change. And then as time's gone on since doing that, and having done research in New Zealand as well, that's really become my main focus, because I think in the fitness industry at the moment, nobody is covering behavior change properly. And yet when you think about it, if somebody goes to a PT, why are they going there? They're going to make some type of lifestyle change. And so I think you need to understand how that comes about.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's been all, I always say to people, I said, follow your passion. Don't think, oh, well, I'm this now, and don't bracket yourself off, because find something that really interests you and drives you. You'll be a better trainer, coach, whatever, because of it.
It makes so much sense. So I think I've even struggled with that a lot when I was going through, leaving my job with a corporate training provider, one of the large ones, into doing my own self-employed stuff again. And, you always get that thing, like, oh, maybe I should stay where I am. And it's that comfort zone kind of mentality, isn't it? So what made you join the forces to start with? Like, what did you serve as? How long were you in for? That sort of stuff.
I was initially in the Royal Marines, and then I transferred into the Royal Air Force because I wanted to do my dad was a warrant officer in the Royal Marines, and I wanted to do electronics and what have you, but I ended up kind of pointing towards doing logistics and stores and stuff. And I thought, that's not for me at all. And my dad said, get out now then, because I joined as a junior Marine at 16, when you could join at 16. And so I transferred into the Air Force. It was the best thing I ever did. So I then did computers in the Air Force, but things, I played rugby for the Air Force, so I was never at work anyway. I was more or less a professional sports person. So it was kind of a smart move, really.
So I'm going to go for some like tangible stuff now for the PTs that are watching this. We'll get that one in early. So what would you say are the most common behavior change mistakes that you see personal trainers making? Because as you said earlier, there's a lot of courses out there that are teaching behavior change that aren't really teaching legitimate stuff. It's kind of a bit wishy-washy, made up. So what are the most common mistakes that you see?
I think there's a couple of things for me. For one thing, I think in the level 3 qualification, we just pay lip service to it.
Yeah.
It's all very well showing people the stages of change model, but if you don't give people some practical application on how you might use that or how you might apply it with a client, it's just bloody window dressing. I don't think that's teaching anybody behavior change. So that's definitely an issue. And then part of the problem is the way we actually train trainers, because I think a lot of trainers, when they finish training, think, right, that's it. I know it all now. All I have to do is tell my client. And if there's one bit of advice I'd give any trainer, it's you don't know all the answers. In fact, your client most probably knows more answers than you do. And your role is guide them to find those answers. Because the kind of directing style of do this, do that, follow that, here's the diet plan. Yeah, it will work short term. We all know that. People can follow that for 4, 6 weeks, whatever. But sometimes when I'm training PTs, I say to them, right, your job in life is to get rid of your client. And they're like, whoa, what do you mean? I said, well, if you're any good, you're educating that client about exercise, activity, nutrition, all these things. There comes a point where they don't need you anymore. They know exactly what they should do. And we see it in elite sport. Somebody wins an Olympic gold medal. The following year, they change their coach. And you think, why would you do that? You won a gold medal with that coach. But the fact of the matter is they've outgrown that coach. And I don't think that's any bad thing to accept that I've done such a good job that my client's kind of good to go. And I always say to them, I said, you do that, that client's going to go around and sing your praises. This guy's great. He does this. He's brilliant. That will get you more clients than you've ever lost. So it's the best bit of advertising you're going to have. So, yeah, so don't think you know it all and let your client guide your client to find the answers.
So, yeah, I think kind of PT stepping more into like a facilitator role more than a boot camp drill sergeant style dictator. So very similar vein, but now on more nutrition. What are the most common nutrition coaching mistakes that you see PTs making? And I know we've only got 90 minutes, so
This could take a while. Well, the first and most common one is writing diet plans. To me, that's a complete no-no. A, because it's outside your scope of practice, unless you're a dietitian or a registered nutritionist. And B, it's totally bloody ineffective anyway. The next one would be supplements. For most clients, they don't need any supplement. If you sort their diet out, that will take care of any of their kind of micronutrients. And I know people will go, oh yeah, but what about this? Yes, there's always going to be exceptions to a rule, but as a general rule of thumb, you don't need all these kind of special bloody protein shakes and pills and powders and Christ knows what. They've got their place 100%, but it's kind of isolated. And when you've got Jill, the housewife with 3 kids who just wants to get a bit fitter and lose a stone, putting them on protein shakes and fat burners and Christ knows what else is complete and utter waste of time, and not evidence-based either. I mean, it's really interesting when I teach supplements at university and we do ergogenic aids, students are often really kind of taken aback by, well, there's maybe 4 or 5 that work, and most of the others are kind of fringe at best, and the evidence is equivocal to say the least. And would you use them with the average client? No, definitely not, because a lot of times the evidence is in elite sport, in very unique kind of niche conditions. So there's a lot of kind of rubbish talked about nutrition, and quite worrying.
Gary, on that note, when you say there's a handful maybe of supplements that are proven by research to be effective, are you talking there about specific protein supplements, or is that like just supplements in general?
Supplements in general. Protein supplements work, there's no two ways about it. You could get into the finer details of Like I work with some elite lightweight rowers, and so I use essential amino acids with them, because what I'm trying to do is reduce the calorie load from protein and just get what they need, because they're on such a restricted diet anyway, that if I can spare calories from protein, I can then utilize it for carbohydrate, because they need that for the endurance kind of base there. So protein don't. But if you look at the Australian Institute for Sport and the IOC, they have what they call category A, category B, category B. Category A is a supplement that works, is safe, and can be used under certain protocols. So even though it's in category A, that's not carte blanche, everyone can use it. It sits here, and in the right circumstances, these are effective and safe. Now, the ones that are in there, they've got all the usual ones, like your protein shakes, recovery bars, that type of thing. But in terms of what people would classically call supplements, I guess, you've got caffeine, creatine, sodium bicarbonate, beta-alanine, and nitric oxide. Those are the 5 that if I was working because I'm qualified as a sports dietitian with the AIS, if I was working as a sports dietitian within that setting, I would be allowed to prescribe those to athletes because they sit category A. Mm-hmm. Category B supplements, however, are equivocal. They're on the fence. We don't really know. There's some evidence for, some evidence against. But if I wanted to use those with an athlete that was under the umbrella of the AIS, I would have to submit a research protocol and get research and ethical approval before I could even try it. And so you can see it's actually, when you start to look at these supplements, it's like the good evidence is actually not for that many supplements.
And even if you took some of those category A supplements, if you've got a rower who's looking to shave 1/100th of a second off their kilometer time, so they might win a silver medal, not a bronze, great. But if it's Debbie down the gym who's can't even deadlift 40 kilos and she just wants to do a couple of Zumba classes a week and she wants to lose a stone by Christmas, it's probably fuck all use for her to worry about.
Exactly, yeah. It's like Dave Brailsford and his small margins. Well, when I work in elite sport, yeah, that's what I'm working with, really small margins. But as you rightly say, when you're working with the average gym goer, the wife, husband, mum, whatever, most of these supplements, apart from burning your money, are doing you not a lot of good. And for most, even when I work in elite sport, when I get a new athlete come to me, one of the first questions they'll ask me is, "Oh, what supplement should I take?" And my question or my response to that always is, "Well, what does your diet look like?" And the amount of times you have to sort out their diet first, and yet their primary thought is, "Oh, I need to be on supplements." And it's not just a case of sort out the macronutrients either. It's a case of meal timing as well, in terms of pre-competition, pre-training, post-exercise, recovery, this type of thing. And so there's quite a lot of kind of fine-tuning within just the average diet before we even get into, right, shall we use supplements? Because I can get more performance response from just getting the diet right and the meal timing right than I ever would from some of these supplements, because they, like, as you rightly say, we might be talking milliseconds or microseconds here, nothing huge that we're going to see on a stopwatch.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember going to I saw a keynote speaker. This was I want to say it's back in the days when LIW existed, and it was the person on stage. I can't remember the name. It might come to me later anyway. The guy had been at the previous Olympics. I think he'd been at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, and he'd worked with a couple of dozen sort of GB athletes that had won medals. And he said, if I take all of my gold medal winners from the last Olympics, and if I take the time difference between their gold medal and the second place over something like 15 or 16 gold medals, it was less than a second that separated first from second. So you are talking hundreds, if not thousands of seconds at that level. And therefore, when you've got somebody competing at that level who you would like to think a lot of the time their diet will be better than Joe Bloggs, not perfect, but it'll be better because they've got guys like you sort of monitoring it. And then by definition, a supplement is something that is in addition to the diet, that then does it give them that minuscule percentage difference? Great. However, if we take a few steps back, we're not working with Olympic lifters or Olympic rowers or Olympic sprinters. Some of us will be, some of us have done, but day to day, 99.99% of all of our personal training careers isn't going to be at that level. And I just wonder sort of where it is. Is it kind of misinformation? Is it a lack of education? Is it a personal trainer thinking, well, my exercise and my diet plans are fucking perfect, so the only thing that's stopping her from breaking world records is the supplement she needs to take? Are they maybe deflecting their own shortcomings and trying to find something else that might be the magic solution?
It's not understanding the fundamentals. Because I think if you look at like level 3 nutrition teaching for PTs, it's very, very basic. It's pretty much the health plate model, might tell you how to work out BMR and Schofield or Harris Benedict or any other equation you want, Mifflin if it's obese people. But it's very, very basic and real kind of superficial level. I mean, what's interesting to me is I've got a first-class honours degree in applied human nutrition. I qualified with Sports Dietitians Australia. My PhD is in men's weight management. I've hardly ever written a diet program for anyone, and even in elite sport, because the way I work with anyone, whether it be elite athlete or Joe Bloggs, is right. What does your current diet look like? Now we'll start to move that towards a better diet. But their current diet is always my starting point, and it's like we'll change things as we go along, because even in elite sport, the diet that the athlete's going to have, it's got to be sustainable. It's got to be enjoyable. Now, diet plans have got their place, and the one time I have used diet plans was when I worked with Mark Adams, who was a European MMA fighter, and 10 days out from a fight, when he was going to make weight, we'd go on to literally a scripted diet plan. And that was simply because he said to me, he said, at that point in my fight preparation, I don't want to have to be thinking about shopping or whatever. He said, I just want to eat, train, sleep. Yeah. And he said, if that diet plan is right for me, I will follow it to the letter. And he did. But he only did that for 10 days leading into a fight. So I think sometimes we kind of get too, like you say, thinking, oh, this is the perfect diet. There's no such thing as the perfect diet, because what is the perfect diet for you for training, or for Josh for training, or for me, they're going to be completely different, because we're different animals. Our genetics are different and everything. So you've got to find out what works for the individual. And in order to do that, you need a real good fundamental understanding of basic physiology, biochemistry, and whatever. It's not just a case of eat this, it does that. You need to understand what's going on. You need to understand about recovery and how muscles recover and all the other finite things about it. I mean, in the first year of a nutrition degree, you do the same physiology as a doctor. And I was really quite surprised when I started my degree. I thought, I would never have thought you would do this much physiology and biochemistry, but it's as you go down the line and start to you understand why you need that underpinning knowledge. And having superficial knowledge is not as good as having knowledge that's based in sound foundations. A bit like building a house. You want to build your house on sound foundations.
But that is the exact analogy that I use when teaching personal trainers, and also when speaking to clients. And for different reasons, and I think it's a brilliant analogy. And what you tend to find, I don't know, I'm hypothesizing here, but Is it the fact that in the last 10 years, technology, social media, the way we behave and interact has changed drastically? So now it's all about the bells and the whistles, the sexy stuff, because that gets likes, it gets engagement, it gets people following me on Instagram. If I show my tits and arse, like my muscles, my six pack, here's me doing this real fancy high-end show-off circus trick, that's going to get a hell of a lot more interaction than looking at this absolute basic, boring, dull fucking foundation. Like, a builder isn't going to show a picture of him digging a hole to build a foundation. He shows the picture of the finished, like, bloody beautiful building with all the decorations and the furniture in place, because that looks good, that's going to sell it. But that couldn't be there if the foundations weren't good enough, strong enough, and they didn't spend more time digging down before they ever started building up. And for me, you're definitely preaching to converted there, because partly because of my own lack of intelligence, I've had to fixate myself on the basics, because I've always struggled to go much further above. And I just think that's helped me massively over my 15, 16 years, because it's given me that simple foundation that then makes it so much easier to steer and tweak things to whoever stands in front of me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I really agree with social media. Is a blooming nightmare, quite frankly, for personal trainers.
Yeah.
Because the trainer, as you rightly say, is seeing all these people with the followers and the likes and everything else. And funny enough, I was flicking through Instagram earlier, and like pretty much every PT in there, especially female ones, they're pretty much shots of a model posing. It's like, what's that got to do with being a personal trainer? Yeah. But that's the shot that gets all the likes and everything. So I'm not sure about that. Yeah. So it's a problem for the trainer, because they feel, well, that's the way I've got to represent myself. And that's what I've got to look like. And yeah, I've got to have the fancy plan and the magic fat burner and the quick answer or whatever. And it's more of a problem because that's what their clients are looking at as well. And their clients are reading this. Oh, you can reduce your body fat in 3 weeks and just follow this plan and it burns fat and whatever. So they go to the trainer with an expectation that, well, that's what the trainer will do for me. And that's very hard to combat, because it's a bit like the argument we've got at the moment with COVID, with vaccines. Vaccines are based on science and they're published science, but the strength of the argument against vaccine comes from social media. And when you look at what it's based on, it's like just personal opinion. It's like suddenly everybody's a blooming immunologist and God knows what. And it's like, you've got no understanding. They'll talk about things and you just think, if I was to query you on that, you'd fall apart in a minute. My wife hates me at times simply because, having completed a PhD, one of my favorite sayings to people is, where's your evidence for that? And she'll say something and she'll look at me and go, don't you dare say it. And I said, well, you know then, don't you? It's like,
Gary, did you load the dishwasher? Where's your evidence to prove otherwise?
The evidence is that all the fucking plates are still on the worktop. That's my evidence.
Yeah, I didn't really think that through, but
it's good, but it gets you crucified. Like she showed me a diet in, I think it was OK or Chat, or one of them magazines. You know, there's like £1 off the shelf there. She goes, what do you think to this? And it's a brand new magazine, right? She just bought it from when we were at the services. I took the magazine, I tore out the 2 pages, ripped them up and put them in the bin. She went, that's brand new. I said, well, you asked me what it is. So I said, it's rubbish, so that's where it's going. So now she doesn't show me diets in magazines, funnily enough. Cured her of that. Result.
That's an interesting note, because I mean, I work in the media, have done for a long time, and it does my head in, the absolute dross that you see shoved down people's throats. And again, a bit of me wonders, when we're touching here on like human behavior and behavior change particularly, is that, have we almost painted ourselves into a corner here where over the last probably 20 years, technology has increased massively. Have we sort of backed ourselves into a corner a little bit where we want everything quick, easy now, and we've therefore maybe developed bad habits of just sort of looking for that clickbait headline, lose a stone in 2 weeks. Brilliant. I'll buy that magazine and I'll buy it. And even though it's absolute shit and it doesn't work, next time I see it, I'll buy another one. And I'm just going to change from pillar to post because I want that real quick gratification. I don't want to have to put the effort in for 12 months when this thing's saying I've only got to do it for 12 days or something like that. So it does my head in. However, I can kind of see how people fall for the like I've used the phrase like a clickbait headline, or how a magazine will use something like that because they don't give a shit about the person reading it losing weight. They just care about, can we sell more issues than we sold last month? Keep our shareholders happy. So sort of like I get it from both sides. From your perspective, when we're looking now at like human behavior, how has our behavior changed over a couple of decades? And how has that then affected? Am I right in thinking that might have then made most of our clients more likely to want the quick wins rather than investing in a long-term amount of effort?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. We live in a consumer society where everything is, as you say, quick fix, done, very little effort. I can buy the answer off the internet, online, whatever it might be. And when you're trying to counter that argument with this might take months or even years, in the consumer's mind, it's like, well, I've got the quick fix over here and it looks pretty good. And the thing about that is when it's in kind of magazines or whatever, they are relying on marketing strategy, which says if you keep pushing the same message long enough, people will believe it, no matter how ridiculous it is. And so they repeat that over and over again to the point where people think, well, I've heard it so much, it must be true.
Yeah.
And social media is brilliant for that because you can kind of post, repost, reword, whatever, but it's still giving the same message. And it's a very hard sell when you get, because I say one of the first things I'll ask a client if they've come to me for weight management is, how long has it taken you to get to this weight? And they'll normally go, well, when I was in my 20s, I was this, and now I'm in my 30s, I'm this, and now I'm in my 40s, I'm this. I'm like, right, so we're talking 20 years. I said, the bad news is if it's taken 20 years to get here, it might take us 10, 20 years to get back there. And I said, I can't even guarantee you'll get back there. So that kind of pulls the rug out from under them straight away. And the analogy I always use is, you've taken this many years to climb the mountain. You are now at the peak. You've got two options at this point. You can jump off the mountain, but generally jumping off mountains don't do you a lot of good, tends to cause you damage. So it doesn't really solve the problem. Or you can walk back down the other side, but walking back down the other side takes just as long. And I said, the jumping off the mountain option, that's your fad diet, your quick fix. I said, generally it'll work, but the long-term consequences, we don't know and tend to be not good. But people don't want to hear that. They want to hear, oh, well, you can fix me in 3 weeks. It's like people will come to you and go, oh, well, I've got a wedding in 6 weeks. I need to lose 1.5 stone. I'm like, okay, yeah, which limb should we chop off then? Because it's like, it's just not realistic. But you're fighting the media. Oh, yeah, but my friend said, Karen, you're always fighting that. It's like, even with personal trainers, when I've been teaching behavior change, psychology, whatever, and they'll go, oh, yeah, but we've got this guy in the gym that da-da-da. You know, it's always the guy in the gym. I said, I'm going to use your same analogy for something else now. I said, I know someone that was knocked down and killed by a bus at a bus stop. So therefore, using your logic, never wait for a bus at a bus stop. And they go, oh, well, you're being ridiculous. No, I'm not. I'm giving you a one-off instance, and and I'm basing everything I believe on that one-off instance. and at that point, the jaw drops, and it's like, I don't know how to answer that.
I think me and you must have got the same book of sarcasm for Christmas a few years ago or something, because
it runs in my family. Me and my brother are a nightmare. My wife says it. She said, sarcasm, you're terrible. It's like,
but it's true though, isn't it? I mean, there some of those lines that you just reeled off in the last minute or so. Some of them are the identical things that I'll find myself saying to people, flippant comments like, "Yeah, great." So even pedantic things like where people say, "Oh, I want to lose weight," and I'm sort of saying, "Well, you don't. You want to lose some of the excess fat that you have in places on your body you're not happy with. If you want to lose weight, I'll chop one of your arms off, no problem. There's probably half a stone gone. If you want to, but that's not what you're saying and what you mean are actually two different things.
I think it's one of the worst statements we've got within obesity and everything else is people are overweight. No, you can't be overweight. You can be over fat, but you can't be overweight. I think we need to change the language.
Yeah, but then if you use the F word, you get all the hippies fucking moaning that you've shamed them and that they're the healthiest person ever because one obese person once was healthy, so therefore obesity is healthy.
Yes, I'm going to base all my evidence on a one-off instance. It's like, that's not good.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's a Piers Morgan rabbit hole that we can maybe go down another day, like upsetting hippies and wokies and all that sort of stuff.
The other classic one you get, especially in PT world, is, what's the best exercise for fat loss?
Yeah.
And when I used to teach level 3 PT, I'd go around the room and everybody would have their pet exercise. Oh, it's this, it's that, it's that.
Yeah.
I'd go, no, you're all wrong. And they go, oh, what do you mean? I go, the best exercise for fat loss is the exercise your client will do every day. And that's the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
If the client says, oh, I don't like that, but I like walking my dog for 5 miles, you don't go, well, don't walk your dog for 5 miles because that's not the ideal exercise. It's like, you love walking your dog, walk the dog.
Yeah. You don't tell them to stop walking the dog forever because you need to do this 12-minute insanity class in your spare bedroom. Like, so no, but I don't like that. Well, no, but this is what you have to do because the infomercial that charged me 90 quid told me it's the best thing for fat loss. And the man on the advert had a 6-pack. So therefore, that's proof that it works.
You know who the man on the advert's going to be, don't you? And I will
the
name
bloke selling it.
Michael Mosley.
Right.
Now, there's somebody I will quite happily name and shame. Guy does my head in, talks so much rubbish, but because he's on the BBC, everybody thinks, oh, he must know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So on that note, you get a few of these. Like the bane of my wife's life is when we're sat happily watching something on TV, and I reach for the remote control to press pause, and she's like, "Oh, for fuck's sake, I just want to watch the program," and I'll be like, "No, just listen, just give me 2 minutes. Just let me point out something." And if it's on one of these, there was a program that was on recently, and I've used it in some weight loss seminars I've delivered. It was, it's basically they take 2 people, and they're looking at how to lose weight. So, in one of the examples of the program, they take a bloke, and his job is he drives around fitting car alarms. So he's in his car all day, and as soon as he gets in the car, he eats his packed lunch, which is all sort of processed chocolate bars and crisps and biscuits and sandwiches and whatnot. He eats it first thing in the morning as he's driving out of town, and then he doesn't eat again until dinner time. And the program says, so the reason his weight stays the same. Oh, I'll tell you what, yes, the program is about why their weight never changes. So they're like, the reason his weight never changes is because he eats all of his calories in the morning, and therefore his body then uses it all throughout the day. So that's why his weight never changes. Then at the same time, they introduce this lady. Her job is a gardener. So they're like, she's working out in the garden all day long. So she's outside, heavy lifting, manual labor, bending, crouching, blah, blah, blah. And she the reason her weight never changes is because she pickles her own vegetables, and then when she eats them, it's giving her so many nutrients that's maintaining her weight. And so they tell us those stories, then they bring up like a screen that says we track their calories for every day for a week. And then it says the bloke eats 2,500 calories, she eats 1,600 calories. And then every day, give or take 20 to 50 calories, he burnt 2,500 calories and she burnt 1,600 calories. And they skip that bit really quickly to then say, so this is the diet, the eat everything first thing in the morning diet, and you'll stay the same weight. And this one is like pick all your own veg or whatever labels they give it. And I pause it. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. You've just put up a slide that's fucking proven the reason their weight hasn't changed is because they burn the same amount as they consume. Like, why aren't you focusing on that bit?
I always watched it. Was it Lose Weight Well was one, wasn't it? And
yeah,
there's quite a few of them. They always tend to be in January, and I always watch them because somebody on social media is always going to post, oh yeah, but this program or whatever. And if I haven't seen the program, it's kind of unfair to comment on it. So I watch them, and my wife sits there, and I'm like throwing things at the telly and screaming, well, that's bollocks. There's no physiology to support that. And that's not true. And she goes, I don't know why you watch these programs. They wind you up. So yeah, they do, but you need to watch them because I've got to provide like a decent argument when somebody says, yeah, but this program says that. Well, if I haven't seen the program, I can't argue against it because they may have actually said something that's accurate. From time to time, they do actually say a little bit of truth in there. But like you say, they tend to kind of whitewash over that really quick because we want the magic diet or whatever it is. It's like,
well, that's the thing. And I think one thing people don't realize about television, radio, media is that it's all based on sponsorship and advertisements, and product placement is a massive part of that. I was chatting to a couple of years ago, I was interviewing elite athletes, putting stories in magazines, and a guy who used to send me a few athletes then went and moved for a different agency. He sent me an email, and he's like, "What are you up to?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm thinking about compiling a load of blog posts and putting them into a book." And he's like, "Well, if you want for $5,000, I can get you on a radio show on BBC One, on Radio 1. And I was like, oh, right, fair enough. And then later on I was thinking, hang on a minute. I was like, where does that end? Like, because if you watch TV or you watch a radio, everyone's always got a concert to promote or a tour to promote or a film to promote or a book to promote. Every single guest on every single show. And when you actually look at it from the inside out, they just fucking pay. Their PR pays for a slot. If you and I wanted to go on the Jonathan Ross show, we can, no problem. Not because we're A-list celebs, but because we just pay the fee that will be astronomical, but it gives us that PR to plug our product. Jonathan Ross doesn't sit there going, oh, do you know what I want? I desperately need to speak to Davina McCall because she's the oracle of all things exercise and we need to spread her words. No, Davina's got a fucking DVD coming out. Her PR company pays for the slot, and then you go on a bit of bullshit chit-chat and then plug your DVD. And I don't think a lot of people kind of appreciate they need some sort of filter to batten down the hatches when it comes to bullshit, and then to identify the things that are actually informative and useful to them.
I think this is where good education is so important. Even at level 3 PT, level 2 gym instructor, we need to give our trainers more kind of critical appraisal. We need to make them question things. Because at the moment they seem to accept things. Oh, I've seen that on social media, or such and such. He's a bit of a celebrity. I know his name, and because he says it, it must be right. When I teach anything, I always say to my students, question everything. I said, I can back up what I say, but question it. I said, don't, just because I've got PhD, question it. I don't care. That's what you should do with everything, whether the person's a doctor, whether they're a celebrity, whatever. Question the evidence they're using, and if they just try and brush you off, then there's a pretty good chance they can't back up what they're saying. And I'm sure you and Josh, when you kind of teaching or whatever, if somebody was to say to you, why is that? Why does that exercise work? You'd be able to justify why it does, because physiology says, da, 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 da. You don't just go, because I say it does. You back it up. And so trainers need to become critical. Don't just accept what you see. Ask for the evidence. As I say, where's your evidence for that? Anyone that's any good at their job will be able to support what they're saying. And that should give you confidence that, well, I'll listen to this guy because he can back it up with evidence. And we don't do that enough. And we should all be critical.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's an important point. I did some work with Brendan Chaplin at S&C Education for a year or two, and one really good thing that Brendan did was he would sort of instill in you this kind of policy whereby you ask the question why 5 times, and if you can't ask your, and this is in like critiquing your own work. Yeah. So let's say I've written a gym program for Josh, then go back through and ask myself why 5 times. And if I can't answer it 5 times, I probably don't understand it as well enough as I should do to be able to say, Josh, this is what you should be doing. Whereas if I can sort of justify it to that degree to myself, then I know I understand the principles behind why it's been put together that way. I haven't just copied and pasted it off the internet and given it to him, and that's my one why. Well, because that's what this influencer did, so now you're doing it. Simple. And I think I try and say that on all courses I teach to personal trainers, but as a tool to critique themselves, but then also, as they're looking outward to other educators and other influences, it's a really important and difficult skill to have.
I like that though. Question everything you put out, and the why idea. I like that idea. I think we could. And the good thing about that is, if you can't answer it, that should tell you, well, that's a hole in my knowledge. I need to get that filled. I need to understand that. I need more education in that area. I mean, the reason I came across motivational interviewing was I was psychometrically tested, and I use personal trainers in my research, so it's practical. It was done in the field. And what we found was I can screen people and I can tell you whether they're ready psychologically to lose weight or not. And if they're ready, they were allowed to enter the weight management program. If they weren't, we basically gave them information and got rid of them. The problem for me with that was when I went to New Zealand, we repeated the same study, but we did it with public health. And we got to this point again, and they said, well, in public health, we can't turn around to people and go, you're not psychologically ready. We're not going to deal with you. And so I had to find the answer. It's like, how do you deal with people that aren't psychologically ready? And that's where I discovered motivational interviewing. But that came out of somebody questioning, we can't do that. And so I had to think, I don't understand that. I need to figure out what the kind of missing bit of the puzzle is. And so that's where I kind of got to where I am today. But that's only through questioning what you're doing and thinking, I can do this better, or I should understand this better, or whatever it might be. And if you're going to find a niche as a personal trainer, and I always, don't be a jack of all trades, be a real expert in one field. It always kind of, I was a personal trainer for all those years with God knows what qualifications, but I kept finding I didn't understand nutrition. Now I went away and got a degree in nutrition. So when people say to me, I haven't got time for that, I'm sorry, but I blow that argument off. If I can manage it with a family and everything else, I found the time and I worked around it. I did PT in the evening. I was doing the degree full time and worked around it. And when I did my PhD, I worked 7 days a week, teaching for Future Fit, but doing the research as well. So the I haven't got time or whatever argument to me is hogwash. You either really want it or you don't, and find out where the areas that you're lacking. And that's not detrimental either. We all lack certain skills. The key thing is recognizing that you do lack skills, and then thinking, right, how am I going to get those skills? And we should all be on that journey. I want to acquire new skills. People said to me, well, you've got a PhD, you've done the MI, why are you doing counseling? The reason I'm doing counseling is, what I've come to realize is, personal trainers, when they're working with clients, are working as counselors half the time. They're kind of dealing with all the other issues about their life, my husband, my love life, and God knows what. People will tell you loads of stuff. And if you don't know how to handle that, you could actually do more harm than good. You might be doing a great job on the exercise front, but mentally, psychologically, you could be doing a lot of damage. And so you need to understand these things.
Something you just said there is another great example of typical personal trainer. If they're dealing with a client, they will have like go-to phrases and approaches that they will use to get the client to adhere to the program. However, that same PT will not abide by the same rule when it comes to their own self-development. Like when you say, let's say if I'm talking to a client and say, right, all you need to do is come and see me 3 times a week for 40 minutes. And she says, I haven't got time. Well, I might not say it as bluntly as this, but the comeback to that is that you have got time. You're just not making time. You're not making a priority to fit this in. You've just watched 8 episodes of Game of Thrones this week. You've got time to do these exercises. You're just not, maybe psychologically, emotionally, physically, you're not in the right frame of mind to fit it in. However, same personal trainer, right? You need to do this 12-month anatomy, psychology, Olympic weightlifting, whatever course it is. You need to do this 12-month course, and it's going to be 3 hours of study every single week. I haven't got time. And then they'll draw a line under it and say, no, I haven't got time. So hang on a minute, you just fucking said to her, basically made her feel stupid for saying you have got time, you're just not managing your time very well. Yet now you're not accepting that you're not managing your time very well, or you're not prioritizing that education and seeing how it values your business moving forwards. Does that make sense? And I've said that.
Yeah, 100%. It's like, I think sometimes it's what you call kind of latent potential.
Right.
Like, you can be learning stuff for a long time and you're thinking, this isn't doing much for my business. But what you don't realize is your business is not going to grow kind of linear. It will be uphill and down dale. And what I mean by latent potential is all that learning that you're doing, all those courses you're getting, certificates, webinar, whatever it is, any type of learning you're doing, whether it be books, teaching, whatever, it's building a base. And at some point that will start to lift up, and then it will track your business up. But it can take a long time. So it's like invest in yourself and you'll see the results somewhere down the line. You know, it's like, you were talking, I think, other than you or Josh saying about like pricing is the way, but you know, am I worth that? If there's one thing I've learned is when I first went into business for myself, I massively underpriced everything I did. And everybody used to say to me, yeah, but you've got a degree, you've got a PhD. And what they pointed out was you've got 10, 20 years of investment in education and everything else. That's what you're charging for. You're not charging for the 1 hour that you're with the client and this is what Joe Blogs down the road is. They're actually paying for all those years of investment and experience. So you should always see education and CPD as growing you as a trainer, that somewhere down the line is adding value to you as a trainer, because that's what you kind of overlook it to a degree. And it's like that value is you almost can't put a price on that, because experience and knowledge can only be gained over time.
And I suppose that there's a correlation between the amount of time, effort, and money you've invested in your own development, and then hopefully, if you've implemented that information, that has then had a positive impact on the quality of the services that you can provide, which then leads, hopefully, if you implement that well with the client, leads to either an accelerated progress, or it leads to progress where before they didn't get progress with Joe Bloggs down the road, which that's what then gives them the value in the 100, 200, 300 quid a month they're paying for you, rather than just the 10, 15, 20 pounds for 1 hour of your time that you're selling to them.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot. You should be a long-term investment for your client, and you should be investing your time so as your client gets the best results.
Yeah.
And you should always feel that you're kind of over providing to the client. You know, you're kind of giving that bit more than maybe they expected. So I just think, what would you expect if you went to somebody and asked their advice? You would pick somebody that you would hope has got the expertise and knowledge. And if they said, to get my expertise and knowledge costs £100 an hour, if you think, well, they've got the expertise and knowledge I need, you'll pay that £100 an hour. You wouldn't query it. In fact, sometimes I think when you price things too low, people look at it and think, he can't really be that good. He's not charging that much.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a good point. Josh, have you got a question before I move on to habits?
Yeah, I've got 3 final questions. So I'll do 2 and then I'll do all 3, and then you can do your questions, and then we'll
see how it goes.
Move on to the next bit. So Gary, I'm going to put 2 questions in one here. So you've already mentioned motivational interviewing in nutrition and fitness as a resource that you'd recommend everyone reading. Do you have any other kind of go-to resources that would benefit personal trainers in both behavior change but also nutrition? Like not together, but what resources do you recommend for those?
For nutrition, I always recommend Mary Baracus, Human Nutrition. It's a real basic book. Mary was one of my PhD supervisors, but it literally is that. It gives you the basics. It's a Human Nutrition, a Health Perspective. It's the book. So that's always gives you all the underpinning stuff you need. Yes, there are lots of other books, but for me, that's like, well, there are the basics, and you can go from there. Because I think you would come back to that kind of conversation again of you're either going to be a nutritionist or you're not.
Yeah.
And it's like, all this book will do is kind of give you the underpinning. But if you really want to do nutrition properly, then go and learn about it properly.
Yeah.
And decide for yourself, what am I? In terms of behavior change, Self-Determination Theory by Ryan and Desai is really good, simply because it talks a lot about motivation and really explains about intrinsic, extrinsic motivation. And I think a lot of personal trainers will say, oh, my job's to motivate the client. And it's like, you need to understand what motivation is. It's not standing over somebody going, go on, 1 more press up, 1 more burpee. Oh, you're doing really well. What a great job you're doing. That is a form of motivation, but it's extrinsic motivation, and it's not that powerful. What we're trying to build with our clients is intrinsic motivation. So they find it from within. And that is built from capability. So the client understanding how to do something, and it's built out of self-efficacy, a client's belief that they can do it, and enjoyment. And I think we often overlook that with exercise prescriptions. It should be enjoyable. It should be fun. Years ago, I used to train a client in Cheshire, and the guy's a multi-millionaire, and he owns half a Delamere forest. This is how much money he's got. And I used to train his wife. And one day I used to train his wife and a friend. And one day I took them out into the woods with flex bands, and we just run around. We played tag in the woods. I kid you not. But every time we got tagged, we were doing a press up, burpee, whatever. And we ran around for 45 minutes like nutters. And then we came back and I said, great session. She goes, oh, that was brilliant fun, better than exercise. And I said, you've just run around for 45 minutes. I've given you exercises for every major muscle group. I said, and now we're stretching off. I said, so that was exercise. And she actually said to me, she goes, yeah, but it was fun. It can't be. So that shows you what a perception of exercise can be. And it's like, sometimes I think we lose track of that. It's like, make it fun, because if it's fun, they'll come back and do it again. And that's intrinsic motivation. And so that's what we should be looking to do as trainers, is help our clients find the reasons why they want to get fitter, healthier, or whatever. We can tell them, but that's really not that effective. It'll go in one ear and out the other. It's like if telling people worked, nobody would smoke. And yet the biggest smokers are doctors and nurses. Well, they know all about cancer and lung disease. So going on about tarry lungs and that don't work. Bill Miller, who's one of the founders of motivational interviewing, one of his favorite sayings is, people don't like to be should on. And it's just so true. You should do this. You shouldn't do that. People don't like it. It builds up barriers. So we need to understand what motivation is. We need to understand how we build intrinsic motivation in our clients. And we need to understand how we help our clients move forward psychologically, so as they're in the right place to take action on whatever it is, whether it be their nutrition, their activity, their exercise, whatever aspect of their lifestyle that is that they need to modify.
It makes a lot of sense. I think that's something that I often struggle with some of my clients. Not that I've got that many anymore, but the building different levels of motivation, or the intrinsic need or want to change. That's so important. But I'm quite lucky that two of my long-term clients are both professional athletes. So obviously they've got just the craziest amount of determination, motivation, and it's all from inside them. I never have to ask them, twice to do anything. And I think that's massively beneficial. But
well, I'm convinced that, especially at elite level, I actually don't think it's a physiological difference. I think it's a psychological difference.
Yeah.
Because the elite athletes that I've worked with, there's definitely something in them that they can focus and they can get rid of all the other noise. They've got this real blinkered, that's where I'm going. And it is to the detriment of other things. And I think in elite sport, you have to accept that maybe your social life or whatever's going out the window. But in the elite athletes that I've worked with, they've definitely got that ability to, right, I'm focused. Nothing else is coming in this window, basically.
To be fair, I'm very similar to elite athletes, that when I see a buffet, the blinkers go on and I'm just focused. Like I'm heading there. Nothing else can distract me. There's kids, push them out of the way. I'm on that buffet. So my final kind of question, again, it's a double-pronged question. If people want to get in touch with you, where should they go? And then secondly, what courses, resources and stuff do you have available that would help people listening to this podcast?
Right, so you can get hold of me via my website, at the back of my head here, stagesofchange.co.uk. On Instagram, Dr. Gary Mendoza. And on Twitter, Dr. Gary Mend. So everything's on the website. There's an introduction to behavior change course. It's like 30 quid, e-learning, cheap. But the good it's not just theory though. There's practical things in there and what's interesting to me about that introductory course is it talks about your own self-awareness. It's as much about you as it is about your client, actually. Starting to understand yourself a bit. And it's the one thing I've learned from learning counselling is self-awareness, self-reflection is so important, because you do tend to impose that onto other clients without maybe realizing it. So there's resources in there that you can use for yourself and for your clients as well in the third module. And I'd say that's dirt cheap, 30 quid. Then you've got the behavior change and motivational interview and workshop, and that's AFN certified. So it's got external certification, and you will definitely come away with that with a whole bunch of skills. The interesting thing for me, and it's kind of come about by accident, but it kind of makes sense, is motivational interviewing is a really good sales tool. Because if you're using motivational interviewing skills, the client pretty much talks themselves into the sale anyway.
Yeah.
So not only is it a behavior change skill, it's actually quite a good sales tool. And if you look at some of the testimonials on there, quite a few trainers have said, my God, it's so much easier to convert prospective clients using this than it was, I'll do this and this is a benefit and not as good. So that's all online. It's 4 modules. First one's about 3 hours, following ones are about 2 hours. There's homework every week because it is certified, it is externally assessed. And then the last workshop on there is the psychometric testing. And these are the tests that personal trainers actually used in the field when they were kind of assessing people's readiness to change before they let them enter the weight management program. And so you can do that workshop on there and you get all the psychometric tests then to use with your clients. Tells you how to interpret the data and all that type of thing as well. And the beauty of those tests is that research, I ran it in the UK and we got an 86% success rate. I did exactly the same research in New Zealand with the Maori and the South Pacific Islanders, and we got very similar results. So we know that it works cross-culturally as well. And in fact, they've adopted that system in the Manawatu region of New Zealand now. So right across public health in that region, they now use this program.
Wow,
that's amazing.
What are the costs, Gary, on those second two?
The behavior change is 107. Behavior change and motivational interview is £175.
Yeah.
And the psychometric testing workshop £60.
16. So 250 quid, give or take a fiver, someone can go through all of that. And
it'll be about 250. There's a package. I think it knocks about 10-15 quid off if you buy the pair. So
yeah, and I think like someone, a typical PT, not all PTs, but a typical one, look at that and go, oh, 250 quid. There's no point in paying that because I need 20 quid to put petrol in my car. Whereas in actual fact, a 200-300 quid investment in yourself and 3 months of like work, dedication, effort, time, implementation of the information, you'll probably be making more than a couple of $100 quid a month back, and that will soon pay for itself.
Well, I make the point. I mean, in business, you always look at ROI, don't you?
Yeah.
And if you look at the ROI on that, if you take the average client paying 50 quid a session or whatever, and it means that you're going to retain that client for 6 months, whereas they might have dropped out after 3 months, you've got your money back God knows how many times.
Yeah.
Because the psychometric testing is a really good retention tool, because you can initially assess whether somebody's ready to change. So should I be working with this person? And if they're not ready, the good thing is if you've done the MI, you can then, what that tells you is, I need to spend a bit of time just sat down with this client doing an MI consultation, because I can move them to a point where they are ready. They then enter the program, and what the trainers did in my research was they tested every 4 weeks. And what you'll find is the data will tell you how well your client's doing. The self-efficacy will slowly increase, the decisional balance will shift, and they will move forward through the stages of change. Now, if at any point any of those data are going the other way, that's a real heads up to you to, I've got to do something here, or this client is going to drop out of the program. And so therefore it improves client retention as well. So it not only is it a good kind of entry point, it's a very good retention tool, and it gives you a USP as well. It's like, well, why should I come and train with you? Oh, well, as far as I'm aware, you're the only trainer around here that kind of tests everybody psychologically as well as physiologically, as well as look at their nutrition. I think there's 3 pillars to training, and it's behavior change psychology, nutrition, and physiology. Most trainers have got the physiology because we do that at level 3. Some have got the nutrition. Very few have got the psychology. And the irony is, if you don't get the psychology right, it doesn't matter how good your nutrition and physiology is, it will just go in one ear and out the other. The client will never do it. And so you need all 3.
And if you flip that model on its head and you think about, where do we as personal trainers, where do we put all, if not the vast majority of our attention goes on the gym, the studio, the actual session that someone does. And that is, if we're lucky, someone might do 2 or 3 sessions a week. Even if they see us once a week, they might do 2 or 3 sessions a week in total. So 2 or 3 let's say 5, if we're really lucky, they do 5 physical sessions a week, maybe 1, 2 or 3 of them with us as the PT. Yet that gets all of our attention, and that takes up probably 1 to 2% of their week. If we then go down into that middle column, nutrition, of what they put in their mouth, nutrition, hydration, etc., they're probably eating 2 or 3 meals a day, if not 3, 4, 5 times a day if they're having snacks. So now all of a sudden, over a week, they're probably having, 30 to 50 meals or snacks per week, whereas they're only having 4 or 5 practical physical sessions. But even so, eating and hydration and nutrition is probably only now taking up 5 to 10% of their week.
Yeah.
Whereas on this final pillar that gets the least attention from us as a personal trainer, it probably has the least amount of buy-in currently from the client, because it's not delivered or sold to them in a valuable way, or it's not even considered to be valuable. Whereas actually the behavior, the psychology, the barriers to entry, like breaking down those doors and identifying why the meals aren't as good as they could be, or why their consistency with their training isn't as high as we want it to be, well, that's probably 85% of their week, if not more, and it's getting the least amount of our time, effort, and money in trying to improve that area. So I think we could probably safely say we could draw a line in the industry today and stop all practical and nutritional education for like a year. And if we only concentrated on behavior and all of the other areas that come under that umbrella, we would develop way more better quality of personal trainers capable of delivering such better end product to the client by not even getting any better at physiological or nutritional implementation.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think was it the Raise the Bar survey or the Lift the Bar survey? I can't remember the name.
Raise the Bar by Future Fit, yeah.
But it highlighted that like 85% or something of
like that.
trainers don't have sufficient understanding of behavior change. That regardless of new or experienced trainers. It's a massive area. It's a bit like that post I put up the other day about personal trainers looking for their clients in the gym. And yet that Mori survey showed that something like, was it 15% of people use a gym? So that means 85% of your prospective clients never go near a gym. So why are you spending all your time trying to recruit clients in the gym? When actually the ones that are in the gym are most probably already into their fitness or whatever. It's the ones outside you want to be trying to recruit. There's a massive market out there that nobody I think personal trainers are really well placed to help with the obesity epidemic if they've got the behavior change skills. And I do think that the NHS would go to personal trainers if we had better standards as qualifications and what have you. But we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot with kind of some of these. I mean, I've been in the industry so long now, and I worked with Rob years ago when Future Fit were like 10 of us, I think. There was me, Kath, Rob, his dad, and that company has always tried to raise standards within the industry. It's kind of Rob and Kath's passion, and getting good standards in the industry should be such an important thing for us, because then personal training will be seen as a creditable, reputable career to be in. But part of that is you need a rounded PT with all the skills. And so that's what we should, all of us that are in education, be concentrating on trying to provide.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that we've spoken about on podcasts recently, and I've also spoken about it in conversations that I've had outside of the podcast with, I mean, that number you quoted there from the study, looking at roughly around 15% of people who are gym members, but of those 15%, probably less than half of them actually regularly attend the gym. So if you're looking at number of regular gym goers in the country, you're probably looking at about 5 million. Well, that's shitloads of people. But then if you double that and say you've got another 5 million who are probably enthusiasts, go for a run, a walk, a cycle, they go and do boot camp in the park or what have you, they're just not gym members, that's 10 million people. That's a fucking lot of people. Yeah. However, there's over 60 million people on this island, and the other 50 million, the other 80% of the population aren't all sitting at home thinking, well, I'm ripped to shreds, I'm healthy as fuck, I don't need to get any better. If I get any healthier or stronger, it'll be unfair on all the other numpties walking around. They're sitting at home thinking they're either ignorant and oblivious to the fact that they're a ticking time bomb, but I think the majority of people will be sitting there thinking, shit, I can't remember the last time I saw my dick when I looked down in the shower. However, I'm so scared or embarrassed, or I don't know who to approach, because I look on the personal trainers in my area, and they've all got their tops off, and they've got like, looks like they've got porn star convention in their class. And if I go into that environment, I'm going to be laughed at. So therefore, I'm just not going to bother. I'll leave it. I'll get fit first, and then I'll go and see a personal trainer.
How often do you hear that? Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm going to join a gym, but I'm going to get fit first. It's like, hang on, I think you've got that the wrong way around. Paul Orridge, you'll know Paul if you're working at Future Fit. I'm sure you've come across Paul.
Yeah.
Paul always used to say he said, what we should do with all personal trainers when we start training them is when you first get them on the course, make them walk around in their underwear in the gym for the day. And I'm like, well, that's a bit pervy, isn't it? And he's going, no. He said, the reason I would do it is that is how somebody new coming into the gym feels. They think that everybody's looking at them, everybody's judging them. And we have to get past this point, because personal trainers generally they got into this because they like going to the gym. They see the gym as a good place to be. But for most people, gyms are scary places.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get the obese individual walking through the front door. So we've got to go out and find them. And part of finding those people is having the skills to engage with them. And that's not understanding exercise. That's not understanding nutrition. That is basic counseling. It's like getting rapport. In MI, we call it engagement.
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to engage with the client. And as you rightly say, telling the client how you got your six pack and how fit you are and how many followers you've got on Instagram is really not going to help that client at all.
It's going to preach to the converted, the people who are already turned on by that stuff, but it's going to turn off a vast majority of people who need a pat on the back. They need things wording in a specific way to encourage them to engage, blah, blah, blah. And I genuinely, I think most personal trainers will be putting off more people than they're turning on, for want of a better phrase. And I don't think they realize the damage. They think, well, this influencer showed a picture of her doing 10 pull-ups. So if I share a video of me doing 10 pull-ups, that's going to put me in some sort of meteoric rise to stardom. But that doesn't fucking change anything. There's still 50 million people out there, most of which are adults of a consenting age that have got 10, 20, 30, 40 quid a month, that you could build a monstrous platform that now can be delivered virtually from their own home. You don't need shitloads of equipment. You just need to understand activity, neat calories, timing of meals, choice of meals, like how to get your delivery to your house, the things to choose and not choose, to be able to make good choices and bad choices. There's so much stuff we can deliver as personal trainers that's got fuck all to do with what personal training looked like 10 years ago. 3 sets of 12 on this machine, that machine, that machine, some intervals on the cross trainer and the row machine, then off you go, see you next week.
I think everybody in the personal training industry should see COVID as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because it's forced people online. People are not scared now of being online on Zoom calls or whatever. Before the epidemic, if I was to say to some people, do you want to jump on a Zoom call? They'd be like, no, I'd rather just talk. Can you just call me? Now you get no pushback. So people are used to that. And as you say, this is opening up, and it's now not your local market. It's now a national world market. But I think, and my marketing person, Chloe, she always says to me, she says, people make the mistake of thinking that followers are customers. She said, that's the biggest myth you can kind of teach yourself.
Yeah.
Just because somebody follows you doesn't mean that if everybody that followed me was a customer, I wouldn't have enough hours in the day. It's ridiculous. So it might be nice for your ego, but in terms of, is it nice for your business? I doubt it is.
We when I was working for Muscle and Fitness, we had a guy on the front cover, ripped to shreds. He was on all the stands at like Body Power and stuff like that. Every protein company was desperate to have him on their brand. He had to work full time, as he had like a labouring job. I think he's a roofer. He had to work full time because his 1 million+ Instagram following didn't pay him a salary. It was, and probably 95% of that was other bodybuilders with 6-packs around the world who were just kind of finding like-minded people, not actually people desperate for help to look like that. You just end up with the wrong type of audience. And yeah, he had 1 million followers, probably not the greatest businessman if he couldn't turn that into a 30 grand a year job. However, that was the nature of the beast. It made him a bit of pocket money here and there, but he still had to have a full-time job.
That's a question for Josh. How would you build a personal training business now in this post-COVID era?
So the first thing I would do is decide how much money I wanted and the model of business that supported my lifestyle, what I wanted. So how much money and how many hours I wanted to work. Then I would build some sort of really valuable, but probably free or low cost entryway into my ecosystem. Be that, it'd probably be some sort of membership site. So they come in, we educate them for 90 days, or whatever, they get massive value, they get results for free. And then at the end of the 90 days, we upsell them into a better service. So that would be small group or one-to-one. And that's the kind of basics of it. And then I would just deliver loads of value, great results, and just push people through the system. That's kind of my way.
I love the fact that you talked about how much do I want to earn, how long do I want to work. How often have we seen, I mean, in all the years that I've been on PT Toolbox, there must be a post at least every couple of weeks, what should I charge per hour? And it's like, all that post tells me is you haven't got a business plan and you need to get your act together. Because a business plan is doing just what you said, working out what I want to earn, how much I want to. And I've done this with some trainers, and they kind of work it all backwards, and they end up at a figure of, for want of an argument, £60 an hour. And then they say to me, people won't pay that round here. And I say to them, you haven't got a business then. And they're like, no, that can't be right. I said, no, that's why you do a business plan. It tells you whether you can make a living from it. And I said, and if the figures don't work, you've either got to think, I'm going to work more hours or find another way of getting that income. I said, but if you know that people won't pay that, you haven't got a business. So go back to the drawing board. And it's like, it's kind of harsh, but having been in the industry as long as I have, the amount of turnover you see where trainers, they come in all enthusiastic, but within a year they've dropped out of the industry because they couldn't make it work. And when I used to actually work in the Future Fit office, people would often ring up having done the nutrition course, because normally the nutrition course was the last course they did. I don't know now, but certainly in those days, it was the last thing you did as part of your level 3. And they'd kind of ring up and go, oh, I'm really struggling. I can't get clients. Can you give me any advice? And I kind of say to them, okay, what marketing have you been doing? What was your marketing plan? And it would just go quiet. And it was like, basically, I think what was happening was they were just going into the gym and expecting that everybody was going to come up to them and go, oh, you're a personal trainer, I want to work with you. And no, that's not the way business works. It's like, you've got to have a sound understanding, and you've got to have a product that people want. And I agree with you. Give lots of free stuff away. This is why I post regularly, and it's all information that theoretically I guess I could charge for. I could put it in a book or whatever, but I don't, because I see the value in putting information out there, because once people read that information, they then think, hopefully, oh, I'd like to know a bit more about that. I'd like to have some skills to be able to do that. But I agree. I mean, start that way round, because it is an opportunity at the moment. There's going to be a big focus as we come out of this on wellness and health and obesity. So it's a prime time to be in this industry if you've got the skills and understand how to kind of market yourself.
Now, would it be fair to say, and I think the answer is yes, that what you've just spoken about there from a business perspective is exactly the same principle that we've applied over the last hour to the physiological, psychological, nutritional 3 key areas where we've highlighted the importance isn't at the top here, the cherries on the top. It's about mastering the basics, the foundations. Build the foundations, and then over years you can specify into high-end niches in any of those areas. And exactly the same principle for business. Like, it's all well and good applying to one of these fucking Muppets that's posting, like, you want to be a 6-figure trader. The amount of people I get now that add me a friend request, and I look at it and like, oh, I've got 74 people in common. So I'll have a look at who is in common. Oh, it's all like Gary, Josh, like Stephen Age, blah, blah, blah. Okay, loads of other fitness people. I'll accept them. Within minutes, you get, oh, hi, Mark. I noticed you're doing great stuff in the fitness industry. Would you be interested in connect? And like, I'm like, fucking hell. Do you think I was born yesterday? You're blatantly. And then I look on their page, and there's like their tagline will be, I help fitness entrepreneurs to live the life of freedom that they want. And I'm like, you're a fucking arsehole. You're preying on those vulnerable people that we've talked about, those PTs that are in and out within 12 months, which is unfortunately probably 80% of everyone who comes into the industry, if not more. And you're then tapping into, maybe either consciously or subconsciously, the fact that, as we've discussed as well, people want to pick low-hanging fruit only. They want the quick wins. They want it now. And if this person is telling me that they've got a 28-day program that's going to make me 100 grand a year, and it's easy, and here's all of the bullshit razzmatazz marketing of all the people that have done it, then I'm going to be hoodwinked by it. I just think that in the same way we've talked about basics and foundations, physiological, psychological, and nutritional, the same applies for business. And if you don't have a plan, you're fucked.
100%. I mean, I am forever saying to people, get a business. I mean, there's my business plan. And I look at that every couple of weeks to see if I'm on track or whatever. I've had to become more business minded. But you're right. It's like that. I don't know whoever said it, but it's like build it and they will come. And it's true. But the thing is, it's a bit like your earlier analogy, which I really like, which is like a builder wouldn't show you the foundations. They'll show you the finished product. And so that's what you're building when you first come into the industry. You're getting your foundations in place. If you're an overnight success, you're just as likely to be an overnight failure as well, because as quick as it's gone up, it will go straight back down again because it's not built on anything solid. I mean, how long has PT Toolbox taken to grow, Josh?
8 years.
Yeah. But that's the reality of it, because now it's there. It's a solid product. People know what it is. They trust it. But that didn't happen overnight, and people have to kind of understand that it's a long process, but it's a worthwhile process. And that's not only for a business, but it's actually the same applies for growing your skills. There's no replacement for experience, and there really is no replacement for knowledge. But you can't gain either of those things overnight. It takes time. And so it's having the patience and the belief that this is an investment. I'm investing in me. And once I've invested in me, I'll see the return somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
But yeah, solid kind of base is 100% what you need. I do offer mentoring, but only for 5 people. And I don't say to anyone, I can grow your business to whatever. My mentoring is all about, I can help you with your nutrition skills. I can help you with your behavior change skills. I've run 3 gyms, a leisure centre and a country club for the Savoy Group. And I've worked as a personal trainer in the field. So I can give you the benefit of my experience. But I'm not going to promise you, because at the end of the day, you can build the business, but I can maybe give you a few pointers as to, don't go down that route. I've already tried that and it's a definite dead end. So I can help impart experience. But in terms of, could I tell somebody how to end up with a 60 grand a year business? I doubt it, because it would be the same message every time. It's like good education, patience and experience.
Yeah. And as well, there's too many variables in there where you're relying on them to do things. So if you hang your hat on it and say, I guarantee that you will make 70 grand a year if you do my course, well, that person can play on the Xbox for 20 hours a week and not implement a single thing. And then they're going to say, oh, you know that money back guarantee, I want my money back because I'm not earning any money. Therefore, the course was shit. Like, well, no, it's what I've guaranteed something that I actually can't guarantee. In the same way, any personal trainer that says, I guarantee you will lose weight or you will lose 3 stone, or I guarantee I will make you stronger, but you can't, because that guarantee is based on you can't do the work for them. Like it's you're relying on them to do the work. Having said that, on that note, I delivered some talks at a conference in Dubai a few years ago, and a British PT working out there, female PT, and she said she had a female local Emirati client who asked the PT to do the gym session for her because it would be a lot easier for her if the PT did the session. And she was like, huh? So the lady was trying to pay her to do her workouts for her, and she was like, it's ridiculous. But if you look at, like, culturally, she's got a cook, she's got a cleaner, she's got a childminder, she's got a driver. Everyone does everything for her. But the one thing people can't do for her is exercise or make her eat. Like although I suppose you probably could just ingest food like intravenously or something. But you know what I mean? Like, we can't do it for them. So like, how come we can't guarantee it? We can guarantee that we will provide all the tools, but everything else is down to the client. And that comes back sort of full circle into how do you change their behavior so that they implement the information you give them so that they achieve the things that you've guaranteed they could achieve.
I think it's something that people have to accept. You cannot make somebody make a change. They have to find their own reasons for wanting to do that change. And some people misguidedly think if I give them lots of justification as to why they should do it, that'll make them do it. It won't. They have to find their own reasons. Change comes from within. One of the reasons motivational interviewing is so powerful is it allows the client to discover for themselves their own reasons for change. They start to hear their own voice as to, I need to, I want to, I should, I'm going to. And that's what makes it powerful. And I think sometimes trainers think, oh, well, I can just tell them what to do and then they'll go away and do it. And they categorically won't, because if it was that simple, we wouldn't have an obesity epidemic. I always think this when we talk about obesity, you know, you'll get Public Health England banging on, oh, we're going to do our 5 a day campaign or whatever. It's like, well, we've tried that for 10 years. It hasn't really worked. I said, I can go out on the street and ask most people that are overweight, what do you need to do to lose weight? And they'll say to me, oh, I need to eat better. I need to eat more fruit and veg. I most probably don't want to drink as much. I shouldn't have as many takeaways. So the question we should be asking is, why don't you do that then? But we don't like to ask that question because that's the hard question.
Yeah.
And that's where this one-to-one skilling, helping people find their own reason. And I think for a lot of clients, your first couple of sessions will actually be more like counseling sessions, not exercise. We're not going near the gym because there's no point in going near the gym until we fix something up here.
Yeah.
And then people will want to go to the gym. It won't be a case of, I'm pushing you through the door, you're doing this. It'll be like, right, game on, I'm ready. But you've got to get them psychologically ready, not only for the exercise and activity, but for the nutrition as well. And you've got to keep building on that as well, because that will go up and down. And one of the things you're trying to do with a client is change lifetime habits. Now, habits are there for a reason. Your brain uses habits to save it processing power, to save you doing things consciously. And so it's very easy. People are, oh, you need to change your habits. You can't change a habit. You can replace it, but that habit is still there. I always use the analogy of it's like software program on your laptop. You can update to the next version of Windows, but actually the old program is still running underneath. And if the new version didn't work, you can quite quickly revert to the older version. Well, that's what your brain does. It writes new habits, hopefully with your help, but it's very easy for it to slip back into the old habit because that's there, it's subconscious. It doesn't have to think about that. And the new habit has to be a very conscious thing. We have to be very aware of it. We have to be aware of what the cues are that kind of make us do that thing. We have to be aware of what the routine is that we run. And we have to be aware of what the reward we get is when we've run the routine. And so you kind of need, and that takes a real big understanding of what your client's lifestyle looks like. So you can start to see where these habits are and then help them consciously start to make changes to that. And it can take a long time, 3 months, 6 months, even a year in some cases, because habits are a useful tool to allow us to function as people.
But habits is something that I definitely wanted to talk about, and I might have mentioned it about half an hour ago, but we've sort of digressed and gone off on other tangents. And knowing what I know about the mass debate section, which should come in here, I know there's only 2 terms left in the hat, and the one that I'd pulled out was supplements, which we've already sort of slaughtered earlier on in the show.
That one.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the mass debate section. I just want to touch on habits for 3 or 4 minutes before we then wind down and finish.
Sure.
Just because I think it's something that's so important. So it's interesting that you say there that it's impossible to, did you say to change a habit or to remove a habit completely?
Yeah, It's in there.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting one because and again, another question that I've that I want to get across is in terms of as a personal trainer, what can we and can't we do and say? And again, we've touched on that with diet plans and stuff like that. But in terms of now there is a definite sort of buzzword or buzzwords regarding mindset and like habits, behavior, blah blah blah. It's definitely emerging as a thing of interest for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But the problem sometimes will be, where do people misinterpret what they can and cannot do? And I think you probably see very often people saying, I will change your habits. And in actual fact, you probably can't do that. I think my questioning will start in terms of habits can be both positive and negative, correct?
Oh yeah.
And like sort of how much can those positive and negative habits be like intertwined, and is trying to, although we can't eliminate either of them 100%, but we can probably, hopefully we can reduce their impact on our lives. And how similar is it to somebody saying, I'm going to turn my fat into muscle? Whereas that's not actually what they mean. That's impossible. You can't turn your bad habit into a good habit. But what you might be able to do is reduce the impact your bad habit is having, and you can introduce new positive habits that can hopefully override the bad ones. But you can't turn a bad one. It can't just morph into a good habit.
Right, the first thing when you're trying to change any habit for any of us, whether it be for a client, whether it be for ourselves, is understand the components of it. And so the first component of any habit is a cue or a trigger. So it's something that makes your body do whatever it is you do, whether that be go out for a walk, sit down and watch telly, eat a chocolate bar, have a biscuit, whatever it is, there's some trigger. Once that is triggered or is cued, we then have some type of response, and that could be, oh, I feel a bit hungry or whatever. And that response will then lead to a routine. And the routine might be, well, I'm going to have a couple of chocolate biscuits because I always do that. So it could be when you come in the door, you finish work for the day, you're a 9-to-5 worker. First thing you do when you come through the door always is make a cup of tea, and you have a couple of biscuits with it, and you sit in front of the telly. Now, the cue in this case is time related. It's coming through the door. And so the brain has learned that every time I come through the door after work, I make a cup of tea, I have biscuits with it. That's kind of the routine. And the reward is I get to relax in front of the telly. So now we understand the complete habit. Now we can look at components of that and think, okay, which is going to be the easiest bit for me to change? I could change the cue, in which case I won't come in the door. When I get home, I'm going to go straight for a walk. I won't go through the door. So that could be change the cue. It could be change the response, the routine, which is, okay, when I come through the door, the new routine will now be, I will make a proper meal. But you'll have to do this consciously. So you'll have to think, I'm opening the door, right, I must do the next part of the routine, which is do this, or I'll hoover the front lounge, or whatever it is, but you're going to change whatever that routine is. And then you're going to have a new reward. Now, the reward can be a number of things. It really depends on what the other elements are. But in this case, it was the relaxing in front of the telly. So it could be finding another way of relaxing. It might be do some stretching, do 10 minutes of yoga. For some people, that reward can just be, I've carried out that behavior and that's got me one step nearer to being healthier. And this is where you use goal setting with emotional anchoring. Once you've set a goal, and a lot of people do goal setting, but what they very often don't do is emotionally anchor that goal. And what I mean by that is, and what I get people to do is, I said, I want you to spend this next week just spending 5 minutes thinking about your happy place. And they look at me like I've turned into some hippie, but I haven't got the long hair. And I think if I'd have heard myself saying this 20 years ago, I'd have been like, get a grip, you nonce. But anyway, now I do believe in it. And so find your happy place. So it's just something in your life that brings a smile to your face. For me, I know what mine is, and the minute I think of it, it does bring a smile to my face. For some people, it might have been having your first kid. It could be graduating. Doesn't matter. As long as when you think about it, it gives you that feeling, because you want the emotion. Once you can switch that on and off, what you now do is you spend the next week or however long associating that feeling with achieving your goal. And so you think to yourself, right, when I get to this weight, this is how I'm going to feel. And you literally just need to sit in a chair somewhere quiet, close your eyes, and link the two together. And you'll know when you've got it right, because now every time you think of achieving your goal, that will bring you that emotion, that smile, that happiness. And so now the goal is emotionally anchored. And you might think, well, why would you do all that? And the reason is emotions are a strong pull. The brain struggles to define between reality and imagination. And so it doesn't really know the difference. And so it just thinks, well, that must be for real. I'm doing it. And so now if the goal is emotionally anchored, all you ever have to ask yourself now is, so you go into the supermarket and you're deciding, should I have like the pizza, or should I maybe get some fruit and veg and cook up a proper meal, whatever. You just ask yourself one question: does this move me towards my goal or away from it? And if your goal is emotionally anchored, you will nearly always pick the better choice. And so your reward might be, in this particular scenario, I've done all those actions, that's moved me nearer to achieving my goal. And that will make you feel good. So, and now you have to kind of take that to the whole of your life. And I know it sounds like a lot, but it's a fact. You can now start applying this to all the other different habits you might have, the things you naturally. So when you go to the garage, do you always fill up with petrol, but you always buy a Mars bar? That's a habit. You just do it, almost impulse action. And so it's starting to spot where some of these habits that don't serve you well, breaking it down into, right, cue, response, routine, reward. Now I know all those four, I can decide which element is going to be easiest to modify. And so I modify that element. And you just do it one or two every 3, 4, 5 weeks. You can't change them all. So it's a case of pick one or two and think, right, they're the ones I'm really going to work on. And you'll have to consciously do it. You will have to say to yourself, almost out loud, actually, I was just reading about, like in Japan, evidently when they dispatch the bullet train, all the dispatchers say out loud, safe, they point, train leaving. And so they do all these things so as they never get into a subconscious habit of just going, away you go. By always verbalizing and pointing, it makes it a conscious thing. And so when you're trying to, you can't get rid of the bad habit, but what you can do is you can look at the elements of that habit and go, that's the bit I'm going to change. And then with time, and nobody can say how long, because if you look at the literature, some will say 21 days, others say 6 months to a year. So I think it very much depends how long you've had that habit, what type of personality you are. So I don't think we can ever say, oh, well, if you've done that for 3 weeks, it's no longer there. We're all going to be different. But as long as we're aware of it, then consciously we can do something about it.
Every single section of what you just said there was ridiculously simple and easy to understand. I just think that it's too easy for someone to go, oh, I'm going to be a habit expert. So what you do, you pick your nose. Yeah, you shouldn't pick your nose. What do you do every time? You go in a lift, you fart out loud. Yeah, you need to stop doing that. That's a bad habit. Well, when you go to the petrol station, you buy a chocolate bar. That's a bad habit. You need to stop that. So in just the same way we talked about nutrition, physiological, blah, 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 just telling somebody what to do is never going to make a difference. But if we think that that's the tool we need in our toolkit to just tell people, yeah, what you sleep badly, yeah, you need to go to bed earlier. End of story. I've solved that problem. No, just telling them what to do isn't the problem. That's the easy, but that's the tip of the iceberg. But how you've just explained it there, and like an actual methodical process of step by step. And if step one is fucked, then step two can be as perfect as you like, but it's never going to get anywhere. Step one has to be nailed. And then when that's nailed, step two then comes into the equation. And I think the point I'm trying to make is, for the sake of a couple of £100, understanding those whys and hows of changing behavior is going to be far more beneficial than just a quick download a free PDF that tells me what behavior to change. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I agree. And I think the biggest thing that comes out of the training, and the one thing that I kind of really stipulate is, and the reason I teach every workshop is, you need the practical element. You need to go and practice these skills. You need to understand the type of language you should be using. You need to understand what good communication is. I mean, I think if somebody came away from my workshop and the only thing they learned was how to communicate better, I've already made them a better trainer. Because some of us, our communication skills are diabolical, because we don't understand, and it might seem an odd thing to say, a lot of us don't really understand what communication is. We think it's just talking to people or talking at people. But
nowadays, this is communication, isn't it?
100%, yeah.
Texting like a two-dimensional text message with no voice, no tone, no sense of sarcasm or humor or meaning, no context. It's just some words on a screen that can then be interpreted any one of a million ways, and some of them might not be that positive.
No, I mean, it's very disengaged. The big thing in motivation, and it's something that's quite interesting to me, is the first process in motivational interviewing is engagement. So you can think of that as build rapport with your client. Now, what is interesting about that to me is a lot of people will do that naturally, but what they don't think about is, do you do that every time you meet the client? And a lot of people don't. They do that initial kind of fact-finding, chatting, whatever, but then next time they meet that client, they just assume that everything that they learned previously is now the same. And what we know in life is it's not. And so every time you meet that client, you must engage. You must get that rapport back. Now, that might only take a couple of minutes, but it is so important, because it kind of comes back to what we've been saying all along, which is that is the foundations of your conversation. And if the engagement isn't there, we certainly won't be able to move to focusing, which is kind of deciding what we're going to work on. And we certainly won't be able to move to the next process, which is trying to discover, or helping the client discover, their reasons for wanting to change. And so all of that is just good communication skills. But a lot of us, some people do it naturally. And I do find this, some of the better trainers I have on the more experienced ones, they actually are pretty much what I would call MI consistent. It's just nobody has ever said to them, this is what it is. This is what you're doing. They don't realize. And so all the workshop does for them is it puts a process on it, so as they can now always think, am I following that process? Because if I follow that process, the outcome is always going to be positive for the client. And so, yeah.
Oh,
lost your audio there.
Yeah, no, sorry. My dog woke up and she was flapping around everywhere, so I just I've muted it because it sounded like bloody reindeers jingling their bells. A point that I always try to get across to people is that if you just copy someone else's methods, let's say we download a workout and now I'll give that to all my clients, or I download a diet plan, I give that to all my clients, or I download this PDF on changing behavior and I give it to all my clients. If I don't understand the hows and whys and I'm just giving all this stuff to everybody and I don't understand how to tweak it to each individual, then any success that I gain is through luck, not through judgment. And if I achieve something through luck, I can't replicate it. I can't buy a lottery ticket, win £1 million, and then choose to buy a lottery ticket next week to win another £1 million because I've won that money through luck. Whereas if I take all the principles of different educators and influencers and I understand the hows and whys, and then I develop my method of implementing that with each individual person, and I understand how to tweak it for a busy exec, I know how to tweak it for a housewife of 3, I know how to tweak it for someone with an injury, blah, 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 then any success that I get is now through my judgment. And if I've achieved something through judgment, I can churn it out and replicate it every single time because I understand how and why it's been achieved. Or if it hasn't been achieved, I know how to tweak it and sidestep the obstacle. And I sort of I'm not trying to do a disservice to personal trainers because I don't want it to sound like I'm always bashing them, but a lot of us will achieve stuff through luck. And we share those stories, but we don't replicate that success with every single person we ever work with. However, if we can achieve things through judgment, understanding the hows and whys, it might cost more money, it might take a bit more time, it might be longer to implement and to reap the rewards. But from a business perspective, which the end goal is what we're all trying to achieve is more business, it's going to be far more lucrative and consistent as a business model, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. I mean, if you look at my research, the initial pilot program, we didn't really kind of know what was going to work, what wasn't. We played around with it, but I was looking at the data. And so the second part of the study, I used that data to say, right, this is what we're going to do. And we got this 86% success rate. Now, that was all data-driven and evidence-based. When I replicated that in New Zealand, same results. So clearly, that was a systems-based working on the data that I had. There was no guesswork at all. We trained the trainers in the same way. They used the same tests. We used the same education tools. And we got the same results.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I suppose if you had just sort of without understanding how and why, and if you had just been delivering like the what's, like as in like this is what we're going to do, and the results, you might have got 40-50% success rate, but that's all right. You can still fit square pegs into round holes and get 3-4 out of 10 people succeeding. But that's very different to 8.5 out of 10 people succeeding through judgment, rather than, I use the word luck because luck and judgment, it sort of works as an analogy, for want of a better phrase. But luck is probably a little bit of a disservice, but there's an element of truth in it, isn't there?
Oh, good, yeah. There's always an element of that, but I think trainers in particular, if they understood the process better, they'd be able to replicate the process. And I think you're right. It's just that when I used to work for Future Fit and we did the on-site training for the level 3 PT course, I'd go on and sometimes I'd look at programs that some of these trainers had written for their clients, and they were all the same. And I'd say to them, I said, "You're not a personal trainer." And then, "Oh, what do you mean?" I said, "You're a gym instructor." I said, "Because you're just writing the same program." I said, "A personal trainer, the clue is in the word personal. This program doesn't match what that client," I said, "and if you can't write a program that is adapted to that client's physiology and what they want to achieve, then you're not a personal trainer." And that's why you need all the A&P understanding. I should be able to put you in a room with a few cans of beans and a few resistance, and you should be able to produce a program for me that exercises every major muscle group. I said, if you can't do that, you haven't got sufficient A&P understanding to produce that. And it's the same with nutrition. It's like, if you don't understand the physiology, the biochemistry, you can't produce a nutrition program that's liable to work. And it's the same with behavior change. If you don't understand all the different underpinning models, so stages of change, self-efficacy, decisional balance, trans-theoretical model, self-determination theory, all these different theoretical models. Without that understanding, it's very difficult to work out which bit is working for your client. You need that baseline knowledge before you can take forward. Once you've got that baseline knowledge, now you're in clover, because you can just apply that in the correct way to every individual. And your programs will always be different because we're all different.
Perfect. Where's Josh gone? Because I was going to move on to the last little bit there, and he's gone for another piss.
He's run away.
2 in 2 minutes. So quickly before he comes back then, Gary, in terms of staying in our lane and what we can and cannot do as a personal trainer, from a nutrition perspective and from a behavior change perspective, what should we be telling people that we can help them with, and what shouldn't we be claiming we can change?
Right, we can definitely tell clients about healthy eating, difference between food choices, and what effects that may or may not have. And that's the limit as far as nutrition. What you can't do is go writing diet plans. You can't tell people what to eat. You can't be prescriptive, and you really shouldn't be doing that. You can analyze people's diets in terms of just calorie intake and maybe help them improve it in terms of offer some suggestions of things they might look at. I think that's still pretty much within your scope of practice. But if you want to go any further in terms of looking at specific food groups to suggest a client eats, or supplementation or whatever, then you've got to get qualified. You either need to be a dietitian or a registered nutritionist. And to be a registered nutritionist, it has to be a degree that's recognized by the Association for Nutrition. All these other courses out there that say you can be a nutritionist, yes, you can. They're not lying, because nutritionist isn't a protected title. But it is in front of the Privy Council at the moment, and so that may well change in the next 6 months to a year. And if it does, a lot of these other courses are going to be a big waste of money, quite frankly. So in terms of, if you want to work in nutrition, as things stand, you might probably doing it. My personal advice would be, at this moment in time, hold fire for 4, 5, 6 months and see what happens with the landscape. And then we'll have a clearer idea of what type of training will be acceptable and what won't. But at the moment, it's still a real grey area. Now, in terms of behavior change, you can certainly help clients in terms of helping them make a change, understanding what's going on. And certainly if you do a basic motivational interviewing course, whether it be with me or with anyone else, that will give you some of those skills to help you work with the client. What you can't do is work with people that have got depression, mental health issues, PTSD, anything like this. So all that any type of basic behavior change course is going to offer you is some real underpinning skills that just improve your communication and improve your ability to understand how people make a change. And just understanding that is often all you need to help a client make progress. So again, if you want to work more in mental health, then yeah, you need to go down the counselling route, which is again 3-year degree. So
cool, interesting. And again, it's a topic that comes up a lot, where people claiming, like, I don't know, as they're using as their bullet points of the features of their services, like I do meal plans and counselling, and I'm sort of hypothesizing there a little bit, but you see it as an easy thing that someone can just slot into their list of talents, whereas I just want to sort of gauge where the land actually lies. And I suppose over time, because the behavior change is a far newer category than nutrition, and nutrition is still sort of, well, there's black and white here, but the grey area is getting smaller. But there is still a grey area in the middle. And I suppose with behaviour change and all that sort of stuff, the grey area is still quite big. And over the next 10, 20 years, that will then refine itself slightly, won't it?
I think one of the reasons the AFM were willing to certify my workshop was it was all based on my PhD.
Yeah.
And that was actually training personal trainers. And obviously all that had to go through ethics. So it was ethically sound and was all evidence-based. So they were kind of happy to certify that workshop because of where it came from and what was being delivered.
Yeah, cool. Well, we don't want to sort of have a blatant and like a force-fed plug for your course. However, if someone's listened to this 2 hours and if they can't subliminally and subconsciously work out that it would be good for them personally and professionally, then good luck to them working in Subway in a couple of weeks' time, because that's probably where that's. You know what I mean. Yeah. Josh, you're back. You're back from your piss break.
Well, actually, my food was just delivered because
mate, every time.
Well, I know that you love to talk, right? So
no,
I ordered my food so it would be here for 1:15 because I was like, that's 15 minutes over the time that we've booked in. So that's 2 hours, 15 minutes. I was like, surely Mark hasn't got that many questions. However, it turns out you did. So and my food's over there.
Well, mate, luckily for you, I can now eradicate your bad behaviour, your poor habit of ordering food in the middle of a podcast. And luckily for you, I'm now like a Jedi behaviour changist. It's on my CV and everything. Gary, I could probably go down another 2 hours with all this stuff. However, let's bring it to a close. Have you got 3 statements that you prepared or that you could just read out off the cuff?
I have.
Go on, give us your 3 statements, and me and Josh will guess which one is true.
Okay. I've played darts with Martin Adams, Wolfie, the 3 times BDO world champion.
He's from Market Deeping, isn't he? Or
Peterborough,
yeah, just on the outskirts, yeah.
I invented a burglar alarm and was interviewed on the 6 o'clock news on ITV. Ooh. And I've abseiled down the outside of Auckland's Sky Tower.
Josh, what are you going for?
See, I reckon there's 2 there that are strong possibilities. So there's going to be some guesswork. So I think number 2 about the burglar alarm, because you said about your time in the Air Force and working with electronics and that sort of thing. But I think as a Royal Marine, abseiling and things like that would be very important. So I'm going to go for number 3. Yeah, that's my guess. Number 3.
Yeah, number 3, and there's a strong New Zealand connection which has come up a few times from like research. So having been to New Zealand and like your bucket list to skydive, like abseiling is probably a stepping stone towards that. The first one, like Martin had, like you're either a massive darts fan. So I've grown up near Peterborough, and I see Martin Adams pop up all the time. He lives on the outskirts of Peterborough. Sometimes pops up in the Market Deeping newspapers, or it might be Market Deeping. It's another town anyway. So the fact that you knew that he's from that area is probably indicates to me that there's an element of truth in there. Either that or you're a massive darts geek. I'm going to go for A, just to be different from Josh. But what's the correct answer?
I win. It was 2. I invented a burglar alarm, and I was interviewed on the 6 o'clock news on ITV when I was 16 years old.
Wow.
But the reason the Martin Adams one rings true is I used to work with Martin when I was a computer engineer. Peterborough was my main data site, and Martin in those days was head of IT before he became a professional darts player, and so I know Martin through that.
And what about the third one then? Any truth in that?
No, I looked at it. I have been up the Sky Tower, but they weren't, it was too windy on the day, and so we weren't allowed to do the abseiling.
Ah, there we go then. So that's 2 things on your bucket list for when you go back to New Zealand.
Yeah, well, that will be what on the bucket list. Go back to New Zealand, because that's God's country. It is the most beautiful place.
Yeah, so I hear. I've never been down that way, and I probably should put it on my list
There's
of
one
places to
country,
go.
go there. That and the Maori, because I worked with my research working with the Maori. I love their culture. It's all about like family and looking after the land and everything. And I really got quite engrossed and engaged with the Maori. And I was actually very privileged. I was allowed to meet the elders, and Pākehā, or white people, are normally not introduced to the elders, but I was actually invited to the elders council because I'd been working with them, helping them with the obesity, and they wanted to actually meet me. So yeah.
Wow. And do you know what? There's a lot to be said about the sort of those minority cultures. I mean, last week we talked about Marvin, and he talked about like Aborigines, and we've talked about a lot of the sort of Asian, like small, although I know the populations are massive in Asia, but just the small cultures that are very, very backwards that we would assume in terms of our like space age culture that we live in. But in actual fact, a lot of the times, if you look at sort of, if it wasn't broken, why try and fix it? And I sort of do sometimes wonder have we made things so much more complicated for ourselves by inventing stuff that we think is brilliant for these things, but actually is it detrimental to these other things? And some of those smaller, more kind of, I don't know, primitive cultures actually plod along quite nicely for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of years.
I think it's their values, like the family values and that. I think that's the thing we could really learn from in terms of just treating other people with respect, trying to help people where you can. Those real basic kind of human things that I think if you do more of, people appreciate, and you'll get payback somewhere down the line. But you know, you often see it, just be nice, and actually there's a lot to be said for that.
100%. Yeah. So final little bit, we'd go into the UKPT group and this at this point, see if there's any questions, but there's one that came up the other day, and there's a lady called Dorothy posted a question about renewing her first aid certificate, and she said something along the lines of,
I saw that.
She said something along the lines of, I did it 3 years ago and it was 60 quid. Now it's 120 quid. When I actually responded to her, she said I think it was something like 180 quid or 176 or something. And her point was sort of saying, is there anywhere I can get it cheaper? And to be perfectly brutally honest, I don't make this comment, and it's in no way, shape, or form directed at her personally, but it's something that pops up on a weekly basis, and I've started making a point of saying the same comment every time I see it. When somebody the other week said, does anyone know where you can get some cheap flooring? Does anyone know where I can get cheap kettlebells? Does anyone know where I can get a cheap marketing, or something like that? And my point is, sometimes you can pay through the nose for something and it will be shit, but you could buy something that's cheap and it's fantastic. However, they're sort of, generally speaking, they're probably outlier results.
Yeah.
Usually you get what you pay for, and if you buy cheap, you buy twice, because there's a reason something is cheap. Probably because they don't sell enough of it, so they've had to drop the price, or they don't value the thing enough to charge what it's worth. Or as a consumer, if you're constantly trying to buy the cheapest available, from a behavior perspective, what does that say about you and the way you value yourself and your business? What message does that give out to other people that are looking from the outside into your business? And I just thought it's quite good timing. I wanted to talk about it today anyway. Again, it's devil's advocate. I see, on one hand, I'm a cheapskate and I love a bargain. On the other hand, I also join the dots together and see the connection between a PT wanting a cheap course, a cheap product, a cheap solution, whereas in actual fact, they are not going to allow their client to buy a cheap product, because they're going to, same thing we talked about earlier, the first thing they're going to do to their client is instill value in the service. But why don't they then have that same belief when they're investing in their business? Is that something about their behavior that they need to improve?
I think it says something about their own values and beliefs, and what value their actual service has to them in terms of their business. Maybe they're not seeing their business as a value product in itself, and so always looking for the cheap option always seems like the real quick shortcut. And they need to understand that they should see their business as an investment, and they need to buy good products to build that business. It's kind of coming back to our house analogy. It's like, if I buy a load of cheap products to build my house, yeah, I'll end up with a house, but now it's going to slowly start falling apart in terms of it'll need redecorating, it won't be structurally sound or whatever. And so it's understanding that you value your business and you want longevity in your business. So all your cheap courses, yeah, they'll keep you going for the next 3 months, 6 months. But I remember reading your post and you saying about the amount of times you've had to deal with somebody that's had a heart attack, or you've had to get a defib out, or whatever it might be. On that one occasion when you need that course ain't going to help you.
Yeah.
And so now your business comes crashing down, because they just go, oh, he was useless, he didn't know what to do in that scenario. And that one bit of bad PR shoots you in the foot, because people always remember negative comments.
Yeah,
we all forget to say thank you and that was nice and thanks for doing that. But if something's wrong, we'll all jump on social media and go, this guy pissed me off, he's talking rubbish, whatever.
yeah.
So you must ensure that whatever you're doing to grow your business or serve your clients provides value. And I think we touched on it earlier, over provide. Always try and provide more than what they're expecting. And the only way you can over provide is by having a good value product in the first place that's got a wide and solid foundation. So when you're looking at any course, whether it be first aid, personal training, nutrition, behavior, always look at the content, always look to see if it's evidence-based, always check out the experience and qualifications of the tutors, and always look at testimonials as well. Did people have good experience? Don't ask on social media. The problem with asking on social media, who's the best trainer for this or whatever, the only people that will respond generally tend to be the ones that have had good experience, or they've got some vested interest. You maybe won't find out about the ones that didn't have a good experience, because if they say anything, oh yeah, I did this and then I wasn't able to help this client, it just reflects badly on them. So you're not liable to get that feedback, or you'll get the extreme of it was so bad, don't touch it. You're not actually getting a true reflection. So testimonials are maybe the last thing to look at. Always look at them. But as I say, the key thing you want is qualifications, experience. Is it externally certified? And that goes for a first aid course or whatever, because that means somebody else has looked at it and gone, yep, that's good value. You're teaching what you say you're teaching. Yeah.
I mean, in terms of, let's say, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say if I wanted to buy a Concept 2 rowing machine to go in my garage. So I know if I buy that brand new from Concept, it's £1,000. That's what it costs. If someone else has got an identical model that's brand new in the box and they're selling it for 1,200 quid, then of course I'm going to buy the one for £1,000. Yeah. If someone's bought that same one for £1,000, They've still got it in the box in their garage, but they're selling it for 800 quid because it doesn't fit or whatever reason. Then I might go, oh, that's going to save me 200 quid. That's fine. But I'm buying a tangible object that is, there's no black or white. It's not this brand or that brand. It's the exact same thing. So if I can get that, someone might chirp up and say, well, I've got an old model and it's 400 quid. Does the same thing. It's just not quite as sexy. There's nothing wrong with that. I understand that. When you're dealing with something like first aid, and that's why that one popped out for me, because I've walked into gyms before where there's been someone having a heart attack and I'm the duty manager, I have to deal with it. I've been on the gym floor where someone's had a stroke and I've had to deal with it, and like the people dropping barbells on their face. And if you stand there like a rabbit in headlights and a member of staff complains because Sally died or was paralysed or was left unconscious for 2 minutes before the member of staff didn't know what to do, because even though they're qualified, they didn't know what to do. I could go to prison in some instances. Yeah. I could be sued in other instances. I could be so mortified that I then leave the industry because I don't want to be in that situation again. And I just think it's an area where some things, scrimp and save and get a bargain, no problem. But there's other things, insurance, PT quals, nutrition quals, first aid, those types of things. Don't look for the cheapest.
Yeah, don't
find out how much 10 courses cost and then choose the best one that provides the best value for you. And if it's out of your budget, save for it or do something to make the money for it. But it just sort of it's just a little bugbear of mine. It's a generic bugbear, not specific to that post, where people just seem to want to, oh, what's the cheapest? And to me, that just means either you're not making enough money to be able to afford to buy a more expensive one, therefore there's other holes in your bucket that you need to plug, or it means that you don't have any value in the results of what you're going to get from the thing you're buying, which again means there's another leak in the bucket that needs to be fixed. And most of them come from intrinsically from you as the trainer, not from the actual product itself that you're looking at.
You've got to believe in yourself, and you've got to have value in yourself and value in your business as well. I mean, and to pick up on your point with the first aid, I know firsthand of a large gym chain, I won't say who, the guy had a heart attack on the treadmill and all the staff stood around exactly as you said, like rabbits in the headlight.
Yeah.
Fortunately for this guy, the guy on the next treadmill was a cardiac surgeon and he saved him, but the staff didn't have a clue what to do.
Yeah.
And then I went to, I was doing level 3 on-site teaching for Future Fit in Guildford at the leisure centre there. And a guy had died on the squash court from a heart attack. And again, staff didn't know what to do. And so they obviously couldn't save him.
Yeah, it's a 1 in a million. I think I listed in the post there, there's probably about 5 or 6 serious incidents. And that's over 15, 16 years. So it's not happening every day. But with stuff like that, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And
you don't insure your car because you think, well, I'm bound to have a crash tomorrow.
No.
You insure your car, because it's the law, but you insure it on that very rare chance that when you do have a crash, the insurance will pay out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same with training. When you hit a problem, that's when your training will pay out. Because if it's good training, you'll just go, right, I know how to deal with this.
Yeah. Yeah, cool, perfect, cool. It's what I was thinking. It's what I was hoping you would say. And anyone listening to this, absolutely, I would reiterate, it's not a personal attack on a person who's asked that question. It's a take a step back and just think about what are you trying to achieve out of it. I mean, something you touched on a minute ago about people. Let's say someone goes on and says, there's another thing that pisses me off when someone says, I'm thinking of doing a PT course. What's the best PT course? And then everyone chirps up and I'm like, hang on a minute. Not one of these people has ever done 2 PT courses.
Yeah.
So they can't tell you what is the fucking best. if someone's done 8 PT qualifications and they can then tell you this is the best one for me for this reason, but when you've only done one thing, you don't know what the best is. So the only people you get responding to that are people who either own or are part of a company that sells PT courses, or people who have got a mate who sells PT courses, or someone who just says, I did it with this company, they're brilliant. But that doesn't actually help the person asking the question at all. If anything, I think it probably makes it harder for them to make a decision.
Yeah, you're getting, as you rightly say, you're just getting a biased opinion. Because if you had a good experience, that's not to say that the 12 people on your course, one of those 12 had a lousy experience. It's the same tutor, it's the same content, but for whatever reason, it didn't work for that individual. So the only knowns are, is the knowledge evidence-based? Is the tutor experienced? Have they got teaching qualifications? And they're the things you can 100% rely on, that at least if they're in place, there's a pretty good chance I'm going to get a good experience here.
Perfect. And on that note, before Josh starts dribbling over his food.
His food's gone cold now, so.
He's got a microwave, I'm sure.
I haven't.
Oh, cold food. I really like cold food.
So does Josh now.
Yeah.
He ain't got a choice, has he? He loves it when I ask loads of questions. Anyway, I'm done. I could go on for hours, but I won't because I'm getting a bit hungry and I do need a piss as well. Gary, thank you very, very much for your time.
No problem.
I dare say in 3 to 6 months, I think it's well worth us getting you back on to go down a couple more rabbit holes and whatnot. So
yeah, it's always good fun.
Cool. Thanks for your time, and hopefully we direct a bit of traffic your way. That's it. I'm done. Over and out. Josh.
Gary, thank you so much for your time. It's been really valuable and lots to think about. Thank you again.
Right. Cheers, Josh.
Cheers.
Cheers, Gary. And cheers,
Thanks, guys.
Josh.
Thanks for joining us for today's show. Don't forget to check back weekly for new episodes. If you want to join the UK's largest Facebook group for personal trainers, just search for UK PTs.